Welcome back. It's Mike, and here we are on one of those not so exciting topics, kind of like tracking numbers and business planning. You'll notice the second half of this whole program we have for you probably doesn't have the same level of motivation that the first half had, because that first half, as I said several times, are the skill-oriented sides, and the second half are more of the worker bee sides of what actually makes a business work. This particular CD, of course titled Practicing Scripts and Developing Skills, is never one of the more popular ones, but probably one of the more important. So I wrote down the first point. The two most important rules in selling are asking good questions of people that you're talking to, and second, listening carefully to the answers. And then I wrote a question down, which is how good are you at both of these? Asking questions, listening to the answers. Asking questions is a skill that takes time to learn. Asking questions is a skill that all great salespeople have. Asking questions is one of those skills that is the difference between a person doing 50, 75, 100 deals a year and a person who wishes they could be there that will never be there. And the second half of that, of course, is the skill of listening. And in both cases, unless you're willing to practice nonstop, developing the ability to ask questions and listen is probably never going to happen. So practice, point number 2, revolves around two issues: the amount of time you spend daily and the intensity of that time you're spending. And again, how good are you at these two? How much time do you honestly spend? Everybody always says, well, I role play 3 times a week for 15 minutes. You're a professional, for goodness sakes. Or you say you're a professional. Can you imagine a professional golfer, basketball player, singer, dancer, actor, football player, baseball player, basketball player, practicing 15 minutes 3 times a week? They would never have a chance, never be on the team. I mean, a high school team practices probably 3 or 4 hours a day for something as simple as a baseball game. A high school basketball team practices 3 or 4 hours a day. For goodness sakes, a little league team practices 3 days a week for a couple hours at a time. And they're in Little League. They're only 7 or 8 years old. And then we have a professional realtor that wants to do 50 deals a year that A, never practices at all, or B, practices 15 minutes a day. The amount of time you spend daily in practice and the intensity. And then I wrote down 3, create a practice plan for yourself. Okay, that includes the amount of time you're willing to spend. Second, who you're going to spend it with. And then third, of course, what you're going to work on every single day. Fourth, your practice time should be on your schedule, just like your prospecting and lead follow-up should be. Your practice time is actually part of your schedule, period. Excuse me while I take a sip of water. Why do I say your practice time should be on your schedule? Well, obviously, it's something that you have to do to develop your professional skills, and therefore it should be scheduled every single day. You're going to love the next point, number 5, poor practice, no matter how much you do of it, does not improve your performance. So if here's your practice with your role play partner, when do you plan on moving? So you're not going to move. Okay, so what do you want to do next? Well, first of all, that isn't the script. And second, that isn't practicing. That's poor practicing, which leads to poor performance. Practice as a professional. Practice as if you were in a real live listing presentation, sitting in front of a buyer or a seller. And when you take on that attitude of practice, guess what happens? Your practice becomes more intense, and then those intense thoughts get deep burner into your subconscious mind. So when you're on a listing presentation, your subconscious mind pulls on those good thoughts, and those thoughts come out of your mouth, and you get more contracts signed. I believe you should probably find 4 or 5 good role play partners. And then honestly, if any of your role play partners become negative and quit showing up, find new ones. But you always have to have 4 or 5 because you want to have different responses, different voices, because not every seller is going to be the same. So we wrote down some very basic rules for role playing, okay? The first one is show up on time for your role play appointment. Show up on time. Second, eliminate all the small talk, the complaining, the whining, and bitching that we do so often to each other. Third, stay on the scripts. And when your role play partners get off the script, say, wait a minute. You're off the script. Stop it. The D is make the role play as real as possible in terms of responses. The more real the role play is, the more apt you are to take that right to your next presentation. And then I wrote down give honest feedback to each other, which is so very important because the more honest the feedback, the more each of us can learn from the role playing we're doing. And then always eliminate the ego. I mean, a role play is not about, hey, I'm really hot, I'm really good. A role play is, how do I become better? All you have to do is watch professional football, baseball, basketball, professional golfers, if you're a sports person. Watch a professional singer, dancer, actor, actress, and look at what they go through in terms of practice. And there's no ego involved because, see, there's no ego on the driving range when a professional golfer is hitting balls. Here's a thought for you. Once a week, record your prospecting time. No, just take your recorder and record your prospecting time, and then listen to it. And be critical of yourself, because that's how we learn. If you really want to get good, send a copy to your coach of this recording. And then I wrote down number 9, practice with intensity, because that will set you up to beat the competition and get contracts signed. I always loved back, in the mid-90s when Michael Jordan was playing basketball, and several of the great books written about him always said that his practice every day was way more intense than any game he ever played in. He was always more intense in practice, so when it came to the game, it was fun, it was exciting, and it was easy compared to the practice. Think about that for just a minute. Point number 10, remember that our growth is determined by our willingness to practice and our confidence. Remember, knowledge equals confidence, ignorance equals fear. Our confidence comes from that practice. Customers and prospects want to deal with highly confident people. And then, of course, I think something that all of us should consider is take all the scripts that we have, and you've probably figured out by now there's a lot of scripts involved, and virtually take every script and slowly record what I would call the perfect tape. Record the perfect tape. And that would, of course, include all aspects of the scripts we use, and then listen to that tape as you're driving in your car, okay? Instead of listening to some music. Listen to that tape. Record a perfect tape that absolutely, and I've done this so many times over the course of my career. I have to do a 2-hour talk or 3-hour talk for somebody. I will sit down and I'll record the entire talk I want to give, and then I'll listen to it for several days before I do the talk. It's amazing how much better that talk will be. And of course, remember then there's always room for improvement. No matter how good you are, how big your numbers are, there's always room for improvement, because if you're really a superstar and a top agent, why can't you get better? See, there's no limit. There's no rules that say, once you hit 100 deals, that's it. You can never go above it. Which then brings us to the next portion, which is don't allow your ego to take over and control your ability to practice. If the best golfers in the world practice every day, and the best basketball players in the world practice every day, do you remember back in mid-2012 for the 2012 Olympics and the U.S. Olympic men's basketball team? 12 of the greatest players in the history of the game, practicing nonstop. And then remember, we always will perform at the level of our practice. So although we're not going to spend any more than this 8 to 10 minutes on this topic, we could spend all day on it, but I don't want to bore you to tears. All I want you to understand is you're only as good as the practice that you're involved in. Spend more time in practice to improve your performance. The next CD will be a lot more fun. We're going to spend some time talking about mindset, which, as you and I both know, dramatically affects the results we get along with our practice. Talk to you soon.